Hey everyone, huge news today. We are closer to a ceasefire hostage deal between Hamas and Israel than we've ever been. The Americans are pressuring Israel and Hamas. The negotiations are in full swing out in Qatar. We're going to make sense of all of this for you, give you all the details about what is and is not in the deal, and make sure you stick around to the end of this video where we're going to talk about the reasons why this deal might still fall through. But first, let's take a look at the report from Tamir Morag, political correspondent on Channel 14 cable news in Israel.
העסקה מדברת על כך שבשלב הראשון ישוחררו עד 33 חטופים ישראלים שמוגדרים כהומניטריים. זאת אומרת, נשים, ילדים, גברים מעל גיל 50 וחטופים שמצבם הבריאותי ירוד. בנוסף לזה כלולים בהגדרה של החטופים ההומניטריים גם שני החטופים שנחטפו בעזה לפני המלחמה, שם הסייד והסרט ולגיסטו. בתמורה לזה ישראל אמורה לשחרר 1,000, אפילו יותר מ1,000 מחבלים, מתוכם לפחות כ200 רוצחים שנידונו למאסרי עולם או לתקופות מאסר מאוד ממושכות. הרוצחים ישוחררו לא ליהודה ושומרון, אלא לרצועת עזה או למדינה שלישית, כמו אלג'יריה, קטר או משהו בסגנון הזה. הפסקת האש תיקח כחודש וחצי בשלב הראשון, כאשר ביום ה-19 מתחילת העסקה יתחילו לדון באופן פרטני בשלב השני, שבו אמורים להשתחרר יתר החטופים, ובתוך כדי השלב הראשון ישראל תבצע נסיגות משמעותיות ברצועת עזה, אבל לא תיסוג מהרצועה לחלוטין. תצומצם הנוכחות בציר פילדלפי, אבל צה"ל עדיין יישאר שם בכוחות מדוללים, ובנוסף לזה צה"ל יישאר בפרימטר שמסביב לרצועה. לגבי חזרת עזתים לצפון הרצועה, אז תותר חזרה בכל הגילים, כאשר זה יעשה דרך נקזים לאורך ציר נצרים שבהם יערכו בדיקות ביטחוניות, אבל הבדיקות האלה לא יערכו על ידי כוחות צה"ל, אלא על ידי איזשהו גורם שלישי ניטרלי עם אמצעי פיקוח של ישראל. זה בגדול, אלה הקווים הכלליים של המתווה המדובר.
So let's sum up what is in this deal. First stage of the deal, 33 hostages will be released, but they're not all going to be released on day one. Will include women, children, and men who are ill or have some injury that is significant. This will also include 2 hostages that were actually taken before October 7th. It will begin 48 hours after the signing of the deal with the release just of the women who are not military, because some of the women who are being held hostages are Israeli soldiers. The rest of the 33 hostages will trickle out every few days over the 6 weeks of this stage 1 of the deal, so over 42 days. In exchange, Israel's going to release over 1,000 terrorists. This includes over 200 murderers. These murderers will not include any terrorists who participated in the October 7th massacre. Israel is also insisting that the murderers who are released and the more senior terrorists who are released not be allowed into Judea and Samaria, but that they be sent either to the Gaza Strip or to a different country. And the suggested countries are Algeria, Qatar, Iran, or the like. Regarding residents of Gaza returning to the northern part, because the residents of the northern part of Gaza have mostly been evacuated to the south, residents will be allowed to return to the north. And this is a big concession from Israel. They're allowing all residents to return to the north with no restriction on age or sex. And that means we're going to have hundreds of thousands of Gazans returning to the northern part of the Gaza Strip, including fighting-aged males. The security check of those returning will not be done by the IDF. It'll be done by a neutral third party, but Israel will have some measure of oversight. After the first 16 days of this stage 1, negotiations will begin for stage 2. Now, stage 2 will involve the release of all remaining Israeli hostages, and it should be noted that Israel will not fully withdraw its forces from the Gaza Strip until every single hostage is returned. Israeli forces will remain in a perimeter, in a security perimeter surrounding the Gaza Strip to defend the Israeli towns. The IDF will also retain forces along what's called the Philadelphia corridor. That's the border between Gaza and Egypt, and that's a very contentious spot because that's where all the border crossings between Gaza and Egypt are, and as we discovered a number of significant tunnels where most of the weapons and equipment were smuggled in through these tunnels with the assistance of Egyptian officials. Key point in this deal is that Israel is insisting that this ceasefire not be final because Israel's primary war aim is to defeat Hamas, to destroy both their military and governing capabilities. And it's even been reported that the Israelis have asked the Americans for guarantees that they will support them on this point for the war to be able to continue, although this is not confirmed. But it's also a political issue. If Prime Minister Netanyahu agrees to a deal that includes the ending of the war with Hamas still in a governing capacity in the Gaza Strip, that Hamas is not completely destroyed as a military and governing entity, it will be the end of Prime Minister Netanyahu's political career. Everyone, left and right, will attack him for backtracking on his commitments. The government will almost certainly fall, and he will be viewed as someone who failed in his stated war aims. But at the same time, Hamas might agree to this because Hamas is desperate right now, more desperate than they've ever been at any point in the war. One thing that's gone unreported in Western media is that Hamas is running out of ammunition. I'm talking to the level of bullets. They are running out of ammunition. The ammunition factories that they had built themselves in the Gaza Strip have almost entirely been destroyed and captured by the Israelis. And the border crossings to Egypt, that's been closed off and controlled by the Israelis. So Hamas is now being choked out. They cannot continue to fight this war. They're having trouble getting ammunition. They're also under a lot of pressure from the fact that the Iranian regime is on its back foot and weakened, and Hezbollah has basically been taken off the table. And also you have Qatar. These negotiations are taking place in Qatar. The Qataris very much want to be engaged with the United States. The Biden administration had very warm relations with Qatar. Biden called Qatar an ally. And the Trump administration has been signaling that if Qatar continues to support terrorism, there are going to be consequences. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance said as much in an interview just the other day, that what Donald Trump meant by his threats to bring hell down on everyone involved if there isn't a deal by the time he comes into office, that he was signaling those Arab states that give support to terrorists. And they were obviously pointing the finger at Qatar in this. So the Qataris it's very important to them to show good faith to the Americans and to show that they are not on the side of the bad guys. And they're going to be pressuring very hard. They're going to be pressuring Hamas to accept a deal here. To sum things up, we have a hostage deal, a ceasefire deal, but the big sticking point, the big reason why this deal still has a good chance of falling through is if Hamas comes back and says that they'll only agree to it if the war comes to an end. And that, as I said, is something that the Israelis cannot agree to under any circumstances. Please subscribe to this channel. Stay on top of what's going on. We're going to continue to bring you breaking stories, especially those items that are not making it out into Western media that have to do with Israel and the Middle East.